Welcome everyone. We're broadcasting live from our BlendKit studio in Orlando, Florida. This is our third in our series of topical weekly webinar sessions for BlendKit 2016 as we wrap up week 3, blended assessments of learning. Byron and I are delighted with the ongoing interaction we're having with you. Today, with us, as always, making things run smoothly, is our production manager, John Piso. Also joining us are our guest panelists, Dr. Alicia Janoski from the University of Florida and Central Florida, that is, and Aaron Lewis from Oregon State University. We also have our ever supporting blended learning consultants, Kelvin and Linda, with us today. I will introduce the panelists to you shortly. We have over 1,500 of us in BlendKit 2016, and we are having a rich interaction with one another and sharing our work and examples as we travel together in BlendKit 2016. I would also suggest the use of LinkedIn to make connections to others within our similar enterprise. Please use the opportunity to build your network. Byron and I would like to have additional connections globally. We do have some featured images to share rather. Let us look at our featured image today. First, this is from Robert. Robert says, this is a picture of some surgical equipment and simulators that are blending into a coherent course in robotic science or surgery. Next feature images comes from Jeff and Kirsten. Next image, please. Thank you. And of course, they are blending along the way. Now, each week we do have a poll, and I want to discuss the poll with you at this point in time. Let us look at what you're thinking about the week's topic of discussion, designing assessments of learning in your blended course. As usual, we still have the poll open, and after this recording, you can still access the poll via the email sent earlier today. Poll 1. Let us start with any preferences you might have for types of learning assessments. What types of learning assessments do you typically design? And I'll focus on the top 3, and we have multiple choice, quizzes, exams, and the next was essays, other writings, and the third was projects or authentic assessment or task. Poll number 2. Which of the following specific assessments methods do you plan to incorporate in your blended learning course? And the top 3 were online quizzes and exams, face-to-face quizzes, exams, and of course, papers. And the third poll that we issued, and you still have a chance to contribute to the data here, which of the following issues are concerning you as you design your learning assessment for your blended course? Select all if applied. And of course, the top 3 at this point were online cheating and some complexities in creating multiple choice quizzes and high-level cognitive domain, and creating online quizzes, which is sometimes problematic based on the platform you're using. Next slide, please. We are starting with a question submitted by the Google Doc last week as a basis of our mini panel discussion. During the discussion, please use the Q&A window to post any clarifications you'd like Alicia and Aaron to address. We'll follow last week's format and try to get a question or two if possible. As a matter of fact, we'll make every effort for this to take place. If we do not have time to respond to your questions, we will ask Alicia and Aaron to respond to you in the discussion area. Our guest speakers. Please allow me to introduce to you Dr. Alicia Janoski from the University of Central Florida and Aaron Lewis from Oregon State University. Dr. Alicia Janoski has received several accolades for teaching online at the University of Central Florida. Alicia is an assistant chair and works in the psychology department at the university. Aaron Lewis is from Oregon State University. Aaron joined Oregon State University College of Business in 2009. He has worked extensively developing and delivering blended courses and is seen as an expert in the field of blended learning. Welcome to you both. I will begin the discussion using the questions submitted as indicated earlier. We will start off with Alicia and then we will do the reverse order. The first question: how do I make a student comfortable who is taking his or her first online assessment, for example, a time quiz? Alicia.
Well, hello, and thank you for having me. I think this is a common question that people have, but what I found is that most students are actually very comfortable taking assessments online. At least here in Florida, many of them have taken online courses and assessments as early as middle school here. But a couple of things that I do. One is I will have some sort of low stakes assessment at the start so that they can get comfortable with how quizzes or exams or other assessments will run in the course. And then, I found that if I try to do it just for practice, they won't do it unless there are some sort of points assigned. Also, I try to give them suggestions on how to best prepare, at least when it comes to quizzes and exams. For me, when students hear online assessment, they think open book, open note, and they don't seem to prepare as well. So what I suggest they do is prepare as if it were a traditional closed book face-to-face exam so that they're better prepared to answer the questions, but will likely still have time to look up those few at the end if they need to. So I don't try to dissuade them of the idea that they're not going to have their book in front of them. I don't know that there's a way to really do that, but rather focus on you're not going to get through all of it in that manner. And then lastly, I always ask them at the end of the exam for some feedback on how things went, and if they have any suggestions on how to make it easier for them to move through the test effectively. So things like if they don't like the one at a time item release, then I might be willing to release them all to them at one time if that's easier for longer exams.
Thank you very much. Aaron?
Well, hello. Thanks for having me as well. I'm kind of similar. What I do in the beginning is I actually post a video that I've made that walks them through how to take an online quiz. I have a series of quizzes for each weekly module. And again, I find the same thing that Alicia finds. They're pretty adept at kind of making their way through these online assessments. And then the first quiz is lower stakes as well. And I also give them for each quiz, they get multiple opportunities to take it. They can take it more than once. And so I think if they have any kind of technical glitch or issue on an attempt, they get a second attempt, which I think helps them in taking the exam. And part of my first quiz is they actually get tested on the video that explains how to take the quiz so that they understand kind of the structure of the quizzes, the fact that they get multiple attempts. Similarly, I give them kind of some recommendations that they do the reading and to watch the videos ahead of time because that's what those quizzes are on. And similar to what Alicia said, there's no way. I tell them, look, you're not going to get through the quiz if you try to look every question up because it is timed. And so I essentially give them the same advice, which is do as many as you can before you try to look it up and find the answer for those that you don't know.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that one. In relation to blended learning, what is your experience with formal and informal assessments? Give me a brief overview. Thank you. Aaron?
So I use formal assessments. I have, it's kind of online quizzes and assignments that are formal assessments, and then I have in-class midterm and a final exam. I find that it's hard to do, at least for me, informal assessments online simply because if there isn't a point value associated with it, there just won't do it, or very few will do it. So as an example, I give some tools that they can use to help kind of get into some basic concepts and theories in more detail, but they're not required. And I pull them at the end of the class and ask them, well, how many of you actually use these non-required exercises and resources to help you, and less than 20% actually use them. Within the lecture, what I do is I use clickers, and so those I have, my classes are big. I have 250 to 300 students. And so the clickers are a great way to do kind of an informal assessment. And a lot of times I may take a question that they struggled with online from one of my quizzes and repost that in the lecture, see where they're at, and then have a conversation about it. So most of my informal assessments come through the use of clickers.
Thank you very much. Alicia?
Very similar, and it depends on the course. So I might have them do outside class clicker questions, and then when they come into class, I do different types of clicker questions. So things like, you guys struggled on this item, so let's have a more difficult one in class to discuss, or follow up from an opinion question that I asked them online. But again, I found that if I don't associate some sort of a point value to an informal assessment, about 20% will complete it. Otherwise, they like that they're there. So when I poll them and ask them, did you find it useful? Like, I really liked that you gave it to us. Did you do it? No. So I appreciate that they appreciate that I spent the time creating it. But if you really want them to do it, make sure you assign even some rudimentary points, because as we all know, they'll do anything for even 1 point.
Thank you. I want us to look at the other question. What are your assessment design strategies? Rather, based on time constraint, I'm going to ask Alicia to give me one strategy and Aaron to give me another.
When it comes to exams and quizzes, I think what I probably do that I would suggest you guys also do in concerns of cheating is to design question sets so that there are several questions that the computer is going to randomly pick from that one student will get, but they're all equally difficult. And even though it's more time consuming on the front end, it does make me feel better about cheating, or if there's an issue where I'm going to give them multiple opportunities to take an assessment, I know they're not going to get the same items.
Highlight one strategy for assessment, for designing assessments, one strategy for assessment design.
Yeah, so similarly, I do the randomization to try to cut down on that, and also I put a time limit on it, just so it forces them. If they're sitting there, they've got only a certain amount of time, and each time they retake it, they're going to get different questions. And I think the time limit helps kind of cut down on some of the cheating as well. On a shorter quiz, I will release the questions one at a time, because I think that helps too. But when there's more questions on a quiz, that's kind of impractical, and so I'll give them all the questions at once.
Thank you very much. And another question on blended model design. What has been your experience having students present group projects online or during face-to-face in a blended course?
I don't have group projects that are online in my course, so I can't really speak to that.
All right, thank you very much. Alicia?
Sadly, same. But when I have them do projects in general, I usually have them do those face-to-face as opposed to online.
Thank you. And Alicia, we're at our final question for this segment.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask, because this has come up quite a lot in previous BlendKit iterations, what do you suggest can be done to reduce cheating in the online learning environment?
I think Aaron and I both have spoken to a couple of these, such as time limits and multiple items or question sets. Other things you can look at is online proctoring, if that's an option with your learning management system. Have more applied items than strict definitions. And the one thing I can really suggest is check your test bank. Google a couple of your test bank items if that's what you're using, because I've found that many of mine show up instantly on Google, that those have gotten out into the web. So what I always do for my applied items is I change the names associated with them. Instead of, Joe and Kim, I always use celebrity names. So there are lots of questions about Brad and Angelina, for example. because when they Google Brad and Angelina in any context, they're just going to get a bunch of stuff on the pits, and I don't have to worry that they're going to spend 2 seconds to find my answer.
Wonderful. Aaron?
Yeah, same thing. A lot of the things we've talked about, and also just you have to in any content you've got to refresh your content quarter to quarter or semester to semester, whatever you're doing, to try to cut down on that ability to search the web for it. I also do talk a fair amount about kind of what academic integrity is and academic honesty, both inside the classroom as well as online. And I think those kind of reminders, I mean, they've been shown to kind of help a little bit in making people kind of police their own ethics. So I do a little bit of that just to kind of remind them that they have a responsibility for academic integrity.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Alicia and Aaron. I'll turn over to Byron, who will take a question or two from our online audience if we do have time, and I think we do. Byron, over to you.
Thank you, Rohan. So we do have a few minutes left with our panelists. So I'm going to pull a question out of our participant input questionnaire, the polls. So one question we have here is, do you have a rule of thumb for what type of assessments to do online and what kind to do face-to-face? So I'll direct the question first to Alicia. And can you help answer this question, please?
Sure. Sometimes I give my students the opportunity to vote if I don't necessarily have a preference, but generally I do the lower stakes stuff online and then the higher stakes stuff face-to-face. I just feel more confident that way.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. Aaron, do you have any feedback to add to this question?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. I keep my online quizzes much lower stakes. And then the bigger stake tests I have in class just because I have more confidence about making sure that the academic integrity is there. So I tend to keep the online lower stakes, and I use, for the most part, auto-graded and then some short answer in my assessments and tests online.
Right now we do have a question from Sharon Thornton, and she asked, is there a specific reason why students do not present projects online? So is this question, I think it's direct to Alicia?
Yeah, a big part of it to me is I'm just not confident that the other students are looking at them. And often when I do these kind of project-based things, I want them to be getting feedback from their peers and have an experience of presenting. So that's just the reason I have them do it that way. It offers a better opportunity for feedback.
Okay, so I think that's the only time we have with our panelists, and that closes out today's guest panel. If you have any other questions, looks like we do have a couple of other questions, and Rohan and I will compile and forward those questions to Alicia and Aaron, and we will post the responses in the discussion area like what we did last week. Okay, the next slide, please. And so as we wrap up today's webinar, and I want to touch base on some housekeeping items. Remember, this webinar ends on week 3 and is followed by the week 4 announcement, kicking off our next weeks of activities today. First, if you haven't yet completed the week 1, 2, or 3 feedback form, please take time to complete it. The week 3 feedback form is available at the end of module 3 in Canvas. Also, you may contact us directly in Canvas. We do pay attention to your feedback to ensure that we continue to meet the needs of all our participants. If you are just joining us in BlendKit 2016 course, welcome. And please submit your weekly activities as you complete them, and we will grade them and provide feedback as soon as possible. And remember, these are suggested completion dates set up in the course to keep you on task for completion by April the 4th, 2016. But you have until April the 4th to submit all artifacts and activities for our grading and feedback. So let's take a look at some of the week 3 feedback. And many participants find the DIY assignments really useful, but there was some confusion about the DIY assignments as well. So the DIY activity last week was for you to submit a syllabus draft with key course overview components, including the schedule and protocols. So we also asked that you begin thinking about one module you will develop to complete the BlendKit 2016 badging requirement, and outline that module using the module interaction worksheet. Next week, we ask that you submit 1 to 3 files, and this depends on what is applicable to your course and module development for clear assessment instruction. So if you will use assignments to assess your students' successful understanding of the objectives, then you will need to submit a draft of the assignment and the instruction for completion. You may wish to use the assignment instruction files you provided as a resource in the module. If you plan to use exams or quizzes for assessing learning, then please submit a draft of this activity, including instruction for students to complete. And again, there is a resource file for you to review and use inside the assignment. And also, some of you use the syllabus to outline expectations for activities, instructions, and grading protocols. If this is the case, then look at those files, modify and submit those artifacts for us to review and provide feedback. And also, like this course, some of you have a course that is more of a pass and fail type course. And please define what you consider as pass, fail, and how you will communicate that to your students. And finally, we have had some K-12 submissions where teachers plan to use progress charts or visuals for students to determine their progress and success. Please submit those too and include visuals if possible. You do not need to submit all of these examples for credit, but you may if applicable, and if you want the feedback from us. We will be looking to review at least one of them on your thoughts and expectations and assessment, and we'll mark your grade as complete for at least one submission. And some requests from us on your submissions, and please name your file in a similar convention as what is listed in the assignment area. If you plan to submit an assignment, exam, or syllabus, please label the file with that title. It makes it much easier for us to locate the requested artifacts and review for your completion grade and to provide feedback. Looking to our next weeks of activity, and later today you'll be receiving an email message from us with some guidance on getting the most out of week 4. And in next week's webinar on blended content and assignments, we will be joined by Dr. Daniel Fotasek from Oregon State University and Dr. Paige McDonald from George Washington University. I hope you'll join us for that session. Lastly, don't forget about the UCF EDUCAUSE Certificate. If you have been submitting the DIY projects each week, you are a strong candidate for the UCF EDUCAUSE Certificate. For specifics on the portfolio, please go to the module in Canvas. And continuing education credit, CEUs, will be offered for the first time this year. So if CEUs are valued by your employer or industry, you might want to consider this option. Again, detailed instruction is in the module area. You can read the criteria for evaluating the portfolio in the rubric inside the portfolio assignment. Thanks very much for your participation in today's session. Thank you again for our guests, and Alicia and Aaron, and as always, John Pizzo for the production support. If Rohan and I can help in any way as you progress through the course, please contact us in Canvas. We'll be happy to help, and have a great week.